Well, good morning. Welcome to another service webinar. It's great to see so many familiar names in the chat, as well as many new additions. We're looking forward to working through a new topic with you today. Now, before we begin, I want to bring your attention to the questions tab, which you should see on the side or the bottom of your screen next to a hand-raising icon. And you can use this to ask questions throughout the meeting. We have several team members who can answer questions or will answer questions as you ask them, and then they'll pass along questions they think are relevant for the entire group for a Q&A session that we'll do towards the end. If you do have to leave before you receive a response, our customer support team will reach out to you afterward. And on that note, let's just get into it. So today we're going to be walking through all of the email customization and management options within Service. So we'll start off by addressing emails sent manually and all the associated options for creating and managing templates, inserting names, images, or linking to videos from your emails. And then we'll talk about all the analytics options that exist for manually sent messages and how to report on that data. After that, we'll go through the different automated messages that Service can deliver, ranging from things like confirmation, reminder messages, to automated birthday messages, and then how to edit all of those different automated messages and kind of when they go out. So to get started today, let's just jump straight into sending emails through Service and how you can customize and send messages through your console. There are a lot of different places where you can get to sending an email through Service. It just depends on who you want to send the message to, how you might get to that point. So for example, if you just want to send an email to your entire volunteer database, you might go through the volunteer management side, click into Search and Manage Volunteer Database, search for all of your volunteers by leaving the top search option blank, click Search Volunteer Database, then you can just select everyone, and in the drop down here, go to Send an Email. So this is of course one way to get to sending an email in Service. You could also email one person directly. There's an email icon next to each person's name. And you can also, of course, send emails through the opportunity management side. Let's say, for example, you want to email all the attendees for a particular event. You can go into View the Registered Volunteers for that specific event, select all the attendees, and then click to send an email. So there's a number of different ways to get to the emailing screen. It just, again, depends on who you are trying to email, which direction you might choose to go in terms of who you're searching for. Maybe you need to run an advanced search for a subset of volunteers, but that will kind of dictate how you get to the email screen. Now let's just go through sending an email to your whole database. The first thing I want to point out is if you are sending an email from the volunteer management dashboard, like what we just looked at, running a blank search to view everyone in the database, selecting everyone, and then go to send an email, there are some people that Service will exclude automatically based on different statuses. For example, you can mark a volunteer as inactive, and if you have done so, then that person would not receive a message sent to them. So when you hover over someone's icon here, you can see it will tell you if that person is inactive or active. The color of that icon will change. You can update someone's account to modify that, obviously. If we scroll down here a bit, there's an option to change someone's volunteer status from active to inactive, and that dictates whether or not they receive blast emails that are sent out. Volunteers can also unsubscribe from blast emails. That's something they can do themselves when you send an email to your whole database or to a large group of volunteers from this volunteer management menu. A volunteer will have the option at the bottom of that page to unsubscribe. And if they've done so, it'll change the color of this email icon. And if you mouse over it here, you can see it says unsubscribed. That's also a status that you can see on volunteer accounts. So if we go in to update this person's profile, we scroll down a bit, there's a section of email subscription options. And you can see here this first one, volunteer email subscription status is set to unsubscribe. This is something volunteers can do on their own, and they can do that directly through emails that you send out. And of course, Service will not send emails through this menu if someone is unsubscribed. There are other subscription statuses in here too, as you can see, one for confirmation messages, reminder messages, thank you messages, and birthday messages. For the most part, these are ones that you are in control of for a volunteer. So if someone tells you they don't want to receive reminder emails anymore, for example, you don't have to stop sending reminder emails. You can just unsubscribe that person from that type of message. The only exception to that, volunteers can unsubscribe themselves from birthday messages as well. So those statuses are in here, and obviously that will affect what types of emails this person can receive. So again, if you're sending an email from this menu, the system will take into account if someone has unsubscribed or if you've marked them as inactive, and it will automatically exclude those people when you send a blast email. One other status here, if a volunteer has a failed email address, that means that their email address likely doesn't exist. Maybe they used an email with a typo, or it's an email address that has been deleted since then, like an old work address or an old school address, something like that. So in those cases, again, Service is not going to try to send this person emails. And of course, you can update that yourself. If you go in to update someone's profile, you can change their email address and you can change that status from failed back to normal. Okay, but like I said, those three statuses will get ignored when you're sending an email from this screen. So if I select everyone, I don't need to necessarily search for people who can receive messages. I can just search for everyone, especially if I want to email my whole database. And then all those unsubscribed, failed email addresses and inactive volunteers will just get ignored automatically. So when I go to send an email here, so select it from the dropdown, click on Send Email to Selected Volunteers, the system will automatically exclude all of those people who can't receive this type of message. So now that we're here, we're looking at sending an email manually through Service. And again, this screen you'll find in a lot of different places. It's basically just sending an email. But we're looking at, the recipients that we selected are the people who are listed here. Now, Service knows who these recipients are. So it's just giving us the number of those people. But you can also go back and change who you're sending this message to. I'll kind of show you that in a moment here by using drafts. But as we're looking at this screen, there's a few important things to point out. The first item is your sent from address. This is managed in your system configuration. So you do have a default sent from address. If you want to change that to something different, maybe one of your organization email addresses, you can do that just through our customer support team. What you'll need to do is click on the Need Help button at the bottom. It doesn't really matter what you search for through here. There's a lot of articles to do with emails, things like that. But when you click on Contact Us, then you can submit a ticket and ask about changing your sent from address. Now that's just what your messages appear to be sent from. It has no bearing on the reply address, which is below that. So when you send an email through Service, replies will come back to you by default. If you want to select someone else to receive those reply messages, someone else on staff, you can do so through here. But by default, you will receive replies when you are sending an email. I mentioned the system knows who your recipients are. This is the list of people that you selected. If you need to add in other people, you can do so through here. If they already have an account, search for them by name and add them in. If someone doesn't have an account and you want to include them in this email, you're welcome to do so. Just type in their email address through here. And they'll get added to the sender list, or the recipient list rather. But if you are adding people manually like this, you cannot use a first name variable. So if you wanted to use the first name variable to address people directly, you'll want to make sure that people already have accounts and you search for them to add them to your recipient list rather than adding them manually through here. Okay, and then of course the rest of this is pretty simple. It's just composing your email. You have your message subject and your message body. You'll see in the information box for the message body, it references that first name variable that I just mentioned. So if you'd like to address volunteers by their name, instead of using something generic like saying hi volunteers, which of course is suitable in a lot of cases, but if you want to use people's first names, just plug in that first name variable. It's #fname ##. You don't need to memorize that. Again, it's listed in the information box next to this field. And that will just get replaced with the volunteer's first name. Now, Service does something pretty clever with this. If you are sending an email to, let's say, a family, and they all share an email address, there's 6 people with the same email address, which happens. What the system will do in that situation is not send 6 emails to the same address with different first names listed. it'll send one email to that address with all 6 of the names listed in the first name variable. And it does that intelligently as well. It'll list out their names and use commas to separate them. And it does use an Oxford comma, for those of you who care, between the second to last and the last name. Okay, so of course this is just composing your message. Now I do want to point out there is kind of a prefabricated sort of structure for your messages that Service uses. There's a logo at the top of the page. Below that, of course, is the body of the message here. And then you can also have a footer set up in your system configuration. We'll come back to that shortly. I'll show you where to edit that. But if you wanted to have, for example, like organization-wide contact info, social media links, a quote, a motto, something like that, that's kind of the thing that I typically see through here. So this is just composing your message. If you do want to scrap this structure and do something entirely different, you can when you're manually sending a message. You have a lot of formatting options up here if you just want to change things like the text itself, or if you want to do something like insert an image. Now, if you are inserting an image, then it needs to be online somewhere. So it asks for a source. Where is that image? And you can actually upload images to Service, and then they'll pop up in this image list here. And you can just use that to insert images if you want to. I'll show you where to add that in a moment. But this is kind of one way to engage adding an image to an email. If you want to do that via Service, or if you already have an image online somewhere, you can use this tool to do that. So there's of course a lot of formatting options in here, but there is also an option to edit the source code. So let's say you've already created something like a standard email that you want to use for a newsletter or something like that. You've already made it in some other piece of software. Then you could just go and copy that HTML. And then in here, click on this source code. You can delete everything in here and then just paste in whatever code you wanted to use. Of course, if you wanted to also just manually edit this in certain places, you're welcome to do so. This is just the HTML for this email. Now, something I want to point out that you might have thought about in the past, or that kind of gets asked sometimes, is what about videos? Can we include a video in an email? The answer to that generally is no. Most clients will strip out that kind of data when you send an email with something like a video embedded into it. That's just going to get removed anyway. So Service strips that before it's even sent, because it can produce some issues with spam and things getting marked as spam as well. So if you have a video that you want to send to volunteers, what I would recommend doing is either making like a link that says like click here to watch the training video or whatever it happens to be, and insert a link to that video. This is one way to do that. You can insert a link here, just paste in whatever that, if it's a YouTube or Vimeo video or whatever it happens to be, link that in here. Or of course you could turn an image into a link as well. So you could do that same sort of thing, insert an image and then turn that image into a link. That's kind of typically what I like to do with something like clickable looking thumbnail type thing. So again, if you want to put a video or something like that into an email, you can't really embed the video directly. You'll need to link out to it, and that's just kind of the way that email functions. Okay, so of course this is just composing your message. I want to point out a few other things here as we're talking about building out an email manually like this. You may have noticed, as I've been kind of working in here, the system is saving a draft automatically every 30 seconds. So if you've made changes in here, it's going to save that as a draft. And then if I need to, I can back out and then, go back in and reload that draft. That can be helpful for a couple reasons. First of all, if you have to step away from your desk and you haven't sent the email yet, you're not done yet. Well, if you get logged out, or if you choose to log out, then that draft will still be there. So you can see it just said automatically saving draft, but I can also manually save a draft through here. So this draft will persist if I have to step away or need to send this later. Or perhaps I realized I actually want to send this to a more specific set of volunteers. Not everybody in the database, maybe just a certain search. What I could do is, kind of pause where I'm at, save the work that I've done by saving a draft, and then I could back up and go and run a search for a different set of people, select those results. Obviously, maybe I'd use like the advanced search to do that, or go into an event or something. But I could search for those results, select those volunteers, go back to send an email, and then the system will ask if I want to use this draft. So this draft will stay here until I either choose to discard it or load it and send it. Okay, so just to kind of reiterate that, the draft that is saved is not tied to the recipient list. It is only the material in the message itself, so the subject and the body. Okay, so of course you can save drafts like we just talked about. You can also save templates. So let's say you send a similar or the same email frequently. You can just choose to save that as a template, give it a title, make it either private or shared. If it's private, only the person who saved the template and administrators can use it. If it's shared, that means anyone who has permission to send emails in your account, so that would be everyone with higher than volunteer access, can use this shared template. And once you've saved a template, of course, you can load up that template through here. Just pick which one you want to use, load that up, and then you can send it out. All right, and then lastly, you can also, before we move on from that, you have the option to replace templates as well. So let's say you have an existing template and you just want to make a minor change to it. Like maybe I want to add in the first name variable in here. I could use that variable and then go and click on replace template. And then I would select which of these templates I want to replace. Type in the word replace because you are overwriting it. You don't want to accidentally do that for the wrong one. So there's kind of a verification step there, but then you can replace the template. And now when you go and reload it, it's going to ask you basically it'll use the new version of that template instead. Okay, apart from templates, you also have the option to add file attachments. So whenever you're sending an email through Service, you can add up to 4 file attachments. These are a little bit different than what you might be used to with like Gmail or Outlook. They are embedded within the message as a download link at the bottom. That way you can actually track how many people have downloaded that particular attachment. We're going to get into metrics in a little bit here, kind of the analytics of your emails. And this can be one of those things that you can measure, how much engagement did we get on this email based on how many people downloaded the actual attachment on the message. Okay, now, before we move on from this, I do want to point out too, you might have already seen this, but you can delete templates. So if you have a template that you've used in the past, but you just no longer want to utilize that, you can go in here and delete a template entirely, just to remove it from the system. Okay, now once you've written out your message, you're ready to go, you can either send an email immediately or you can schedule delivery. So I'm just going to put in test here. If we click on schedule delivery, then we can pick a date anywhere up to 30 days out. And then we can also choose what time to have it sent. So if you want to send something on a weekend or on a holiday, you can choose to have the message sent automatically. You don't have to go in and log in, at that particular time to do it. So of course you can also send an email immediately. A lot of times that's probably what you want to do. But if you're trying to send something seasonal or that pertains to a particular date or time, then you can just schedule to have that sent out. Now, when you send or schedule an email, you'll get a confirmation message. And that message will then be stored in a couple different places. If you've sent the message directly, that actually gets stored on each person's profile. So whenever you send an email manually through Service, you can click into a volunteer's account. If we go to View Profile Details, we scroll about halfway through, you'll see an email message history. And this is going to show you the messages sent to this person. You can see when they were sent and the subject. And if you click on this View Email Message, you can actually see who sent it, some analytics information, who the recipients were, and then the actual content of the message itself. So you get quite a bit of data there. I want to point out this analytics. We'll talk more about this in a minute too, but I just want to show you so you can see the recipients, how many people opened this, how many people viewed attachments, unsubscribed, or had failed email addresses from this particular message. So you get a quick glance at some of these analytics. I should point out this open rate is a little bit unreliable. A lot of the major clients will mark things as red, even if they weren't, in the name of privacy. So just take this number with a grain of salt. But that's where the attachment views can also be a helpful way to kind of understand how many people actually downloaded the attachment to get an idea of how many people are engaging with this message. Okay, so again, if you sent an email through, if you manually sent a message, you'll be able to see that on volunteers' profiles. But scheduled messages and sent messages are also stored in one other place, and that's the system log. So on the main dashboard, under System Management, you have View System Log. The system log, if you haven't used this in the past, is a very helpful tool for troubleshooting your system. It stores basically all of the actions that have taken place in your console. You can see when people are logging in, when things are being updated. You can see when messages are sent, when people are registering for events. Now, my demo console is a little bit different. Things kind of get reset. But in your system, you will see this going back an entire calendar year. So you'll see a lot of information in here. And this is, of course, searchable. You can search for actions by a particular person by using their name or their email address. You can also search for actions that follow a certain scheme. Maybe you want to see all the canceled registrations. You could search by a term like that. You can search for deleted items or sent messages. So there's a lot of different things that you can do through here. This is a very helpful tool in troubleshooting. But what I want to talk about right now is emailing. So there is a quick search here to show sent email messages. So you can see emails that have been sent, and you can also see emails, in our case, like what we just did, that have been scheduled. This just tells you kind of the relevant data, when was this scheduled or sent, and then kind of the status, who did this, how many recipients are there, what was the subject. Right? And on the left-hand side, we get this same view scheduled message or view sent message that we saw previously. And if we click on that, it does exactly what you'd expect. We can see that message here. And since this is a scheduled email, I can see when this is scheduled to go out. And I also have the option to delete or cancel this. One thing I want to point out before we click on that is when you're looking at sent messages like this or scheduled messages, you can copy this as a new draft. So let's say I was looking at this and I realized, well, I don't really want that first name variable in there, or I made a typo, or I want to add in some recipients, or whatever the case may be. If I want to change a scheduled message before it goes out, what I might do is copy it as a new draft. So just click on that button. It'll say it's been copied. And I can click here to go and search for those people, but maybe I want to delete this one first. So I could delete this scheduled email. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? And that would, of course, cancel that message from being sent out. It retains a system log message about it, but it's no longer a scheduled email, but a deleted scheduled email. And then below that, I want to point out too, so for sent messages, you have the same option to copy these as a new draft. So if you want to send the same or a similar email to one you've sent in the past, you can copy it as a new draft. And then again, when you go and search for your list of recipients, select those people and go to send an email, it's going to pop up that draft. And you can either load that and then change it and send it out, or discard it. Okay, so those are kind of the different manually sent messages. Before we move on to some automated messages, I also want to point out one report. Under the volunteer management heading, if we go into report management, there's an option here to run a report on email analytics. And this is a spreadsheet report. It does use the date range. So let's say you want to see all the emails that you've sent this calendar year so far. Go and set your date range at the top of the page. And if we scroll down to that email analytics report, it's basically just going to pull a spreadsheet with kind of that list of messages that you've sent. So you'll get that list here. You'll see kind of the messages, when they were sent, the subject, who sent it, and then all the analytics data that we were kind of looking at already. Okay. Well, let's switch gears here. I want to talk about the different automated messages that Service can send out and how and when those go out. So a lot of these have to do with volunteer actions. For example, there is an automated message every time a volunteer creates their own profile. It's referred to as the profile creation confirmation message. You'll find this in the system configuration. There's a section called email message content. And if we scroll down a little bit in here, you'll see an option that says profile creation confirmation message. Now this can be enabled or disabled. There is also another option that could appear in here that says activation. That would appear if you allow your volunteers to set their password initially, because there's another email that's already going out called an activation email that includes a link to confirm that they're the owner of that email address. But this is exactly what it sounds like. This confirmation message, as soon as a volunteer creates a new profile, this would be the email that they receive. And of course, you can edit that through here. You'll see there are 2 variables in this email. And as it would follow, that information is listed in the information box here. So if you're editing this email and you want to add those variables back in because you forgot what they were, they'll always be listed here. I said this before, but it's worth reiterating. Anywhere that a variable is applicable in Service, it will be listed in the information box next to that field. So if you're not sure, always check that information box and it will let you know. Okay, so again, this is a profile creation confirmation message when a volunteer creates their own profile themselves. I do want to point out, if you as an admin create a profile for a volunteer, it will not trigger this message to be sent. And in fact, that's kind of a general rule of thumb in Service. When you as an admin are taking actions in the console, it will not send emails on your behalf unless you are clicking a button that actually says send email. So this is a great example of that. If you as an admin go to the main dashboard, go to add a new volunteer, build out a profile for someone and create their account, that person is not going to be notified. If you want them to be notified, of course, you can send them an email, but that's kind of a general rule of thumb in the system. It's not going to be emailing on your behalf unless you're clicking buttons that actually say send email. Okay, so the profile creation confirmation message is kind of the first automated message that a volunteer might receive. There's a few others that you probably already know about or have assumed, and one of those is a confirmation message for registrations. So if a volunteer signs up for an opportunity, they get a registration confirmation message right away. And that registration confirmation message, the intro to it, can also be edited in the system configuration under email message content. It's actually the first item here. So event registration confirmation email. This is the salutation and the intro to that message. The rest of that email is based on whatever event they've actually signed up for. So if we click on this preview icon here, which is a really helpful tool for seeing what these messages look like, you'll see this in this entire section actually. But if we click on this preview icon, we can see an example of what that email might look like. So you can see this confirmation message. Again, it has the intro paragraph, but then the majority of this message is based on whatever event the volunteer is actually registered for. So this is the registration confirmation email. Again, if a volunteer signs up for an event, they get this message. You can also schedule reminder emails to go out for your events. Those reminder emails, the intro is also edited in this same section in the system configuration. But once again, the majority of the content is the event itself, all the data from that event. Registration reminder emails are only sent when you have them scheduled to be sent. So if we look at creating an opportunity or editing an existing opportunity, you'll see the option to send out automatic reminder emails as well as an additional automatic reminder email. Both of these are identical messages. So this just kind of provides you the option to send out 2 different emails. Maybe you want one a day before, one 7 days before. Again, the content here is identical. It doesn't matter which one you select as which. This just lets you set up 2 reminder emails. There's another type of reminder email that can be sent to the organizer of the event. And that's something that's turned on in this additional organizer options. It says send reminder email to organizers. And this can be sent either a certain number of days prior to the event or on a particular day of the week prior. Why you might choose a particular day of the week prior is that you could set up multiple events in this fashion. And if, let's say, you're an organizer for a whole host of events in your system and you want to get one email on Sundays for the next week that tells you kind of what's happening, how many people are signed up, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of what this email can do. And especially if you set all of your events to send at the same Sunday prior, then you'll basically just kind of get one roll-up email. Now this email, like basically all the other automated messages, can be edited in the system configuration under email message content. And this email is going to look a little bit different. Again, you can edit the intro paragraph, but the majority of the content is actually based on the events that are being sent out to you. So it's this organizer reminder email. And if we preview this, you can see it just has that intro paragraph and then a quick look at the events. So you can see it says the name of the event, the date and time, the number of registrations, and then download links for the sign-in sheet as either a PDF, spreadsheet, or Word document. Now, I do want to point out, obviously, this number here for the number registered is static because this is an email that gets sent out, but the links to download the sign-in sheet are active. What I mean by that is, let's say you check this email as soon as you get it on Sunday, but the event is actually on Thursday or Friday, like in the case here. Well, the number of registrations might have changed in between Sunday and Thursday. So if you check this link again or click on this link again on Thursday, it would look different. It would be updated based on the number of registrations. Okay, so that's another type of reminder email. I also want to point out just a couple other automated messages you can do. One is an automated thank you email. So if you want to, you can have a kind of thank you message sent out to volunteers. This one can also use that first name variable. But this would basically be a message sent to volunteers after they participate in an event. So if you have information written in here, and again, we're in the system configuration under email message content, but if you have a message written out there, then whenever you create or update an event, the system will ask you, do you want to send the thank you message for this opportunity? And you can either say yes to everyone who's registered or only people who signed in. And this message gets sent in the evening. If your event goes through, I think 6 p.m., the message will get sent the following day. You have a chance to mark no-shows and things like that if you need to. But this is a pretty generic email. If you want to send out something like a kind of static link to an exit survey or something like that, this is a pretty helpful tool because you could write out that message, link to that in the message in the system configuration, and then just turn it on for your events and have that sent out. If you have a lot of regulars attending a lot of the same shifts, you might not want this turned on for that particular opportunity. But especially for things like special events or where you do want to send out a survey like that, this can be a helpful tool. Okay, and there's one last automated message that I want to mention right now, and that is the birthday email. So this is also in the system configuration. Under email message content, it's towards the very bottom. You can set up a birthday message through here. If this is enabled, obviously you can dictate what the subject is, and then also, of course, the message itself. This one can use first and last name variables if you'd like to. But this message is sent in the morning on the volunteer's birthday. So it obviously uses the birth date field to track this information. So you do have to be tracking birth date in order for this to be sent out. Okay, and there's one other setting actually immediately below this that I wanted to point out. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You can set up a footer to be a kind of attached to or kind of included at the bottom of your messages. This is where you would establish that footer. So again, a lot of times I like to put in social media links or some kind of quote or a motto or something like that. This is where you'd put that information. And of course, you have a lot of formatting options in here. And then if we preview this, you'll see that this just gets included below the body of the message. So again, I would not put in a personal signature block here. You don't want to put that kind of info in here. It needs to be kind of like organization-wide info. But if you want that kind of stuff sent out at the bottom of all your messages, you can include that in the footer here. And then this can be either attached to every email that's sent out or just automated or just manual messages. Okay, there's one more topic that I want to take a look at today, and that is posting and sending documents, because there's a couple places where you can include documents on your events in particular. So if we go into your opportunity management section and you go to a specific opportunity, let's say you have special parking passes or something like that that you need to include for a certain event. Then you can choose to add a file attachment to that opportunity. So you would click here, view or update file attachments, and then from here you can choose a file and then add that to the event. So once you've added an attachment, whether it's an image or a document, then you have the ability to grab a link to send out that document if you want to. But more importantly, if you have an attachment on an event, you can also post that attachment. And if you post it, this does two things. First of all, it's posted so that any person who is registered for this event, when they are logged into their account, has the ability to go and download this posted document. So it kind of becomes a relevant piece of info for only the people who are registered for this event. But the other thing that this does is it will automatically include this attachment on any confirmation or reminder message sent for this event. So again, if you have like special parking passes or special instructions or a flyer that you need volunteers to be able to have, but only once they've registered, then you could attach that document to the event and then post it. And then it will automatically be included as an attachment when volunteers are signing up for this event, as well as when they receive the reminder message. Okay, and then just once again, that was an attachment added directly to a specific event, and then it will automatically get attached to those confirmation messages if it is posted. Okay, so we're going to move into questions next. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to write those in. We're going to just address a couple here right away. One question is, if you could send out an invite email to an event. So where you send an invite to an event is if you go into manage an opportunity, every event will have a couple things here. I want to point out there are just direct links that you can grab to the event. There's a direct opportunity link, which functions if the event is posted publicly, but there's also a private registration code link, and this functions even if the event is not publicly posted. So if you want to invite people to a private event, this is how you would do that using this type of link. Now there's two links here. You could just grab that and send it out. But we do also have a prefabricated message, the send private registration code invitation email, which you could use to send out to volunteers to invite them to this event. Now, when we click on this, it brings up obviously that message. There are currently no recipients. So if you know who you want to send it to, you could just look them up by name and add them in. But more than likely, you want to run a search for a set of people to email. So what we would do is we would save this as a draft and then go and run our search and then load this draft. But I want to point out what's included in this email. It has an intro paragraph. You can actually edit this in the system configuration as well. And then below that, it has all the details about the event. So date and time, location, information about the event, instructions on how to sign up using that private invite link that we already talked about. So again, what I would do is load up this email, save it as a draft, then go into my volunteer database, maybe run an advanced search for a specific set of volunteers, select those people, go to send an email, and then it'll ask you, of course, if you want to load that draft. You can load it up, make any changes you want to, and then send the email. Okay, so a question was asked if you could remove the standard service template when you're sending an email. So I mentioned this already, but it's definitely worth reiterating. If you would like to start kind of blank here from this template, you can use the HTML to remove some of the style stuff here. So you can just delete different portions if you don't want that included. If you already have a template that you'd like to use, then you can use that directly, but you can start from blank as well. Okay, and then one other question too, kind of in that same realm. If you do have something that you want to do kind of more specifically with the HTML, you can go in to edit that through here, make changes to the HTML directly if you want to. But then if you want to preview what this message looks like, I mean, you can kind of see it in the editor here, but this is pretty small and you might have to scroll even if you don't have a ton of content there. So there is also a preview icon here that allows you to show what this message looks like on kind of a larger format. This is kind of similar to what we saw in the system configuration as well when you're previewing the different messages in there. But this just gives you a good idea of what your message might look like in an email client instead. Okay, these are great questions. Obviously, feel free to continue writing in questions if you have any more, and we'll just kind of keep running through those. Okay, so another question came in about adding images to emails. We did look at that, but that's also something that's kind of worth reiterating. Where I want to start with this, actually, we didn't look at earlier, so this is good, is file management. If you have an image that you would like to add to an email, that image has to be online somewhere. You can't just drop it in from your desktop. It has to be actually on the internet somewhere. The easiest place to do that is in CERVIS. Under System Management, you have a File Management section, and if we go in here, you can drop in images. So kind of like we did earlier, you can choose a file and then upload that to your system. Once you've uploaded an image in here, the system will kind of retain that as an image that it can reference when you are inserting images in different places. So if you have an image that you'd like to put in an email, this is the best place to start. Drop that image in here. So just choose the file from your computer, upload it to your system, and then you'll see that listed here. Once that image is listed in here, then you can go to your email. So if you've already drafted an email, obviously just go and recover that draft. If you have a template that you want to use, go and use that template. Or if you just want to start a new email, go and search for your recipients, then go to send an email. And when you get to this screen, or once you're here, you can insert the image into the message. The way you do that is by using an icon on the right-hand side here that says Insert or Edit Image. Kind of has this picture icon. If you click on that, it'll ask for the source. Now, if you've inserted or if you've uploaded the image to CERVIS, it'll appear in this image list, right? So we can see these images here that have been uploaded to my system. So if I click on any of these, then it will add that image to the document. Now, depending on how large that image is, you might need to change like the width or the height, and you can manually change that through here. Maybe I want to make this a lot smaller. It does lock the ratio by default, which I would encourage you to leave. If you uncheck that, then you can change the numbers here and kind of skew your image, and usually that's not the best thing to do. So I like to keep that locked. So you can change the size of the image here, but once you've inserted an image, it'll also give you handles if you want to change the size of it directly in the message itself. So you can just drag and kind of change the image through there as well. So again, you can either reference an image that is online somewhere, if you have it in like a public Google Docs, or if you have it on your website already, you can link to the image through here, or you can add it to CERVIS, and then it'll appear in this image list, and then you can just select it from that list. Okay, good question came in about editing the HTML of some of the automated messages. I'm glad that was asked. I did not explicitly show that. It's very similar to editing the HTML of manually sent messages. If you go into the system configuration and go down to email message content, any of these messages in here have the same source code option. And while we're at it, they have the same insert or edit image option that we saw when you're manually sending an email. So let's say, for example, you want to edit the birthday message to include, a banner image that you've created, and you want to add that in here. Again, you can use that insert or edit image option, pick from your list and just put in that image through there. And then of course you can also edit the HTML. So if you did want to do something different in the HTML, or maybe you already have an email and you want to use that format, you can edit the source code here and add that in here. Now this is within the confines of the structure of this message, so keep that in mind. It's not the same as sending a manually sent message. You're editing kind of within this box here. But if you wanted to do something fancier with the text, add buttons in, things like that, you can edit the HTML or the source code in these sections as well. Okay. Again, thanks for all these questions. These are excellent questions. Feel free to keep writing those in. If you do have a question and it hasn't been answered yet and you have to leave, just bear in mind that our customer support team will reach out to you afterwards with a response. So don't feel like you have to necessarily wait around, but we are trying to get to those as well. We may have a couple more to address to the group at large. But again, if you have specific questions, feel free to keep writing those in. While we're kind of waiting a moment, I do want to point out some of the resources that you have available to you. So of course, when you are logged into your account, I already showed this earlier, but this is definitely good to be aware of. At the bottom of the page, no matter what page you are on, you will see this Need Help button, and this is how you contact our customer support team. If you click on this, you can type in a topic. So if you search by something like email, you can see, the different messages or the different items associated with that. There's a lot of good information in here. We do keep this up to date. So this is a very good resource, especially if you like to have, written instructions, kind of laying out step-by-step things. This is a really good resource. But regardless what you search by, you can always click on Contact Us to engage with our customer support team directly. Type in your question through here. You can add attachments if you want to, and then you can also send that email through here, or send that ticket through here. Our customer support team has posted hours of Monday through Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time, and they'll typically get back to you within the hour. They are very prompt, so feel free to use this tool. This is an excellent resource. And then one other resource I wanted to mention as well is our previously recorded webinars. If you go to video.servicetech.com, that'll take you to our YouTube channel. You can view all of our previously recorded webinars on here. We have a lot of playlists intended for different kind of topics or sets of information. Most of these resources are intended for administrators, but we do also have some that you can send out to your volunteers. For example, if you want to teach volunteers how to print out their activity history, or how to use the sign-in console, or use mobile sign-in, or things like that. We have some resources like that for volunteers, but most of this, including like our past webinars, are intended more for staff or admin. So there is one other kind of customization option I wanted to mention, just specifically regarding emails. You may have noticed a lot of the emails already have your logo at the top of the message itself, and that is something that is dictated in your system configuration. If you go into the system configuration, there is a system appearance section, and in here you'll see your organization logo, which is the logo that you can find at the top of the page. But below that you have your email template header logo. By default, these two are the same. But if you have an image, whether it's a banner image or kind of like letterhead or something like that, that you want to include at the top of every email instead of just your plain logo, you are welcome to change that separately. You cannot change it directly yourself through here. You'll need to contact our support team to change any of the configured logos. And again, you can use the Need Help button to do that. There's also a link here that you can click to submit a ticket as well. But that logo is something that you can edit. And again, that touches a lot of different messages, including pretty much all of the automated messages. You'll see that it uses that logo at the top for each of those different emails. Okay, well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We got through a lot of different content on the different emails that Service can send out. If you have any other questions, of course, please feel free to continue asking our customer support through that Need Help button. And of course, check out the different resources that are available to you. Once again, I just want to thank you for your time today. As always, we are delighted to have the opportunity to work and serve alongside you. So if there's anything that we can help you with as you are engaging your system, please feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.